What's the bigger pipe dream? The Sacramento Kings trading for Ben Simmons or the Kings trading for Ben Simmons without having to give up De'Aaron Fox? On today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast, I'm going to be joined by the host of the Locked On 76ers podcast, Serena Winters. She's going to join us and really share the honest truth about what a trade with the Sacramento Kings involving Ben Simmons would look like, how De'Aaron Fox basically has to be involved, and what Daryl Morey's overall both philosophy and strategy is in trading Ben Simmons or holding on to Ben Simmons. How much pressure is on him versus how much pressure is on Monte McNair to get a major deal done at this trade deadline? We'll have to wait and see. I think you're really going to enjoy my conversation on today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off season. If you're looking for in-depth analysis, game-by-game breakdowns, highlights, interviews with local and national experts, full coverage of your Sacramento Kings from January through December, this is the place for you, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. And today's episode is brought to you by Truebill, the app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for the subscriptions that you don't want or need. And Truebill can even negotiate better deals on those subscriptions that you want to keep. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I've been a Sacramento sports media member for the last 7 years. This is my 8th season covering Kings basketball, formerly with Sacramento Sports Talk Radio, now with ABC 10 News and Television here in the California capital. And as part of the Tegna network and part of the Locked On Podcast Network, I'm very fortunate to be able to work with so many amazing hosts, not just in the NBA side of things, but MLB, NHL, NFL, college sports. There's so many great podcasts, so many great hosts. The talent on this network is just incredible, and it inspires me to be better every single day. And one of our newest additions to the Locked On NBA network was Serena Winters, from the Locked On 76ers podcast. She recently took it over. I joined her on one of her shows earlier on this season. Now I'm very happy to have her here on the Locked On Kings podcast. Serena, very, very well-versed in everything Philadelphia sports, everything going on with the Philadelphia 76ers. So she is going to be able to provide the context that we all need in regards to a Ben Simmons trade conversation and the true possibility of the Kings trading for Ben. I think you're going to be very interested in everything that she has to say. So without any further ado, here is my conversation with the host of the Locked On 76ers podcast, Serena Winters. Ben Simmons this, Ben Simmons that. What are the Philadelphia 76ers going to do about Ben Simmons? That's been one of the major storylines this season in the NBA, and it's been going on since well before the season began. It's cooled off a bit as the Portland Trailblazers with their Dame Lillard, CJ McCollum situation kind of stole some of the thunder. Maybe the Indiana Pacers trying to get some spotlight on themselves too, being sellers, but it still seems like so much of what's going to happen this season in terms of trades and the trade deadline has to do with what the 76ers are going to do with Ben Simmons. And joining me right now to help get an idea of what the 76ers are going to do, if anything has changed, and to get an idea of what it would take to get Ben Simmons in Sacramento, it is Serena Winters, host of the Locked On 76ers podcast. Serena, welcome into Locked On Kings. Such a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Matt. I mean, we are, 50 seconds in, and we've already said Ben Simmons 5 times. Make it 6 since I just said it again. So we'll see how many we can get to by the end of this time.
If we're under 50, it'll be a disappointment, I think, to a lot of listeners here on Locked On Kings, because Ben Simmons has been a name that is continuing to be brought up in Kings-related conversations, and every single time there's a rumor floated out there, it seems like the Kings are listed as not favorites necessarily to land him, although our sponsor BetOnline for many weeks had the Kings as number one, or at least amongst the top teams to land Ben Simmons. But the Kings just always seem to be involved or connected in the conversation, at least interested in some way, shape, or form. But what we keep hearing from Daryl Morey and the 76ers side of things is that the Sixers aren't budging on a package for Ben Simmons unless they're getting significant value. And some think that that's a smart move to try and play the long game. Others think that Morey is holding on to a false hope and killing Ben Simmons' value maybe even more. Has that changed at all? What's your take on how Morey is kind of been tight gripped with Simmons and his perceived value?
Look, I don't think that has really changed as of right now because we're still in December. As you know, the trade deadline isn't until February, and I don't think we're going to see any movement on this until closer to that deadline. I think if you are Daryl Morey and you've already come out here and said, like, look, we will wait. We will wait however long it takes to get that all-star caliber player type guy. Then you look at the Kings and what your team has to offer and you go, well, if you're not going to offer De'Aaron Fox, then what is the point in doing a deal with Sacramento? If you're Daryl, maybe you would rather wait it out and see, hey, what about a sign and trade for James Harden in the offseason, right? Like, if that is something that Daryl Morey thinks could potentially be achievable, right? Just even a potential chance, then why do a deal with some guys on the Kings roster that are okay talent, but aren't the talent that you want in return for Ben Simmons? At the end of the day, you'd probably want to wait it out and try his hat at a James Harden sign and trade.
You know, it's funny because I wanted to give Daryl Morey a little bit of credit because he's playing a long game and he's gambling, but it might actually end up working for him. And Monty McNair here, Kings general manager, is someone who is very familiar with Daryl Morey. Came from the Houston Rockets, served many years under Daryl Morey, and he played kind of a similar gamble, not in a trade scenario, but in a free agency scenario when it came to Richaun Holmes. Many of us were convinced that the Kings were going to lose Richaun Holmes in free agency. They didn't have that much money to be able to re-sign him. We thought there was going to be a market out there. McNair gambled and the Kings got Richaun still on a pretty good deal. So I tie that into this scenario with Daryl Morey to where at the beginning of the season or during the offseason, maybe a team like Sacramento says, hell no, we're not trading De'Aaron Fox. Hell no, we're not trading Tyrese Halliburton. And then you get the context of the regular season to where the Kings are disappointing. Fox and Halliburton maybe not working as well together as you would expect. And suddenly maybe Fox or Halliburton become a little more available. In your mind, is that Daryl Morey's play, or do you just really think he's holding out because he believes Simmons' value is that high?
I think that would be one of Daryl Morey's plays. I would think so. Waiting it out and seeing. And that's not just Daryl Morey. That's other GMs in the league too. But out of any GM, like if you want to bet on a guy to really wait it out, it is a guy like Daryl Morey, right? He could talk a big game, but he is willing to be really uncomfortable. He's willing to take a lot of heat. So for me, you know, I don't know that I see De'Aaron Fox and the Kings as, you know, really number one in Daryl Morey's mind right now. I see that as one of the cards that he's trying to play. And hey, if it becomes that the Kings continue to spiral, and like you said, this Fox Halliburton partnership isn't what the Kings were hoping it would be, and maybe De'Aaron Fox isn't all that happy because his play isn't getting any better, then maybe it becomes time to say that he is on the table. But look, that's not going to happen now. That's not going to happen until more teams start to show their cards, right? Like with the Indiana Pacers you mentioned, Indiana finally showing their cards a little bit here. There's going to be more teams that do that. We're just so early on. And because, Matt, this has been such a big story, like this is the first time that I can remember in the past few years where December 15th was such a big day.
Yes.
It was like December 15th is here. Are we going to have some trades? The trade market is open. Let's talk about it. It is 12:01 Eastern time, trade market time. You know, I don't remember it ever being like that. I mean, do you? That's how it was for me here covering the Sixers, right? Because everybody wants to know what is going to happen. And obviously these guys start to become available and the cards start to trickle down. But December 15th isn't the only date, right? You've got dates in January. And even for the Sixers, as an example, there are guys on the Sixers roster that don't become available until later. So say you want to do a deal with having Furkan Korkmaz, who's with the Sixers, and maybe it's with the Kings, or maybe it's a 3-team deal. You can't do that right now because he's not tradable right now. He's not tradable until next year, right? So that's why I don't think we're going to see anything be able to happen until we get closer to this trade deadline.
Today's episode of Locked On Kings is brought to you by Truebill. Do you know why free trials renew without your consent? It's a business scam to get your money out of you without you even realizing it. Don't let greedy corporations pocket your money. Download Truebill to take control of your subscriptions. Truebill is the new app that helps you identify and stop paying for subscriptions that you don't want, need, or simply forgot about. On average, people save up to $720 per year with Truebill. Companies make subscriptions hard to cancel. Truebill makes it incredibly simple. Just link your accounts and Truebill will cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. That's it. And you have a Truebill concierge who's there to cancel unwanted subscriptions so you don't have to. Those tough subscriptions that you normally would have to call and go through all these ridiculous steps in order to actually get that cancellation done. Truebill handles that for you and then some. Truebill has over 2 million users that has helped them save over $100 million. Don't fall for subscription scams. Start canceling today at truebill.com/lockedonnba. Go right now. Truebill.com/lockedonnba. It could save you thousands a year. That's truebill.com/lockedonnba. Today's Locked On Kings podcast also brought to you by Bet Online. Bet Online as you cover this holiday season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football gets closer and closer to the playoffs. The NBA season now in full swing. Bet Online remains your number one spot for all the sports action this season. Head to their website or use your mobile device to sign up today, and you'll receive a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. All you have to do is use promo code Locked On to get that bonus. That's free money for you to make money with on Bet Online, from basketball to football, NHL hockey, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, blackjack, slots. They have it all. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2022 year and beyond. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports, so don't wait to take advantage of all the new and amazing offers available. BetOnline, where the game starts. Is there pressure, though, on Morey and pressure on the 76ers? And will that pressure pick up more as that deadline approaches to move Simmons to try and get someone who's ultimately going to help them accomplish their goal of a deep playoff run this year? Maybe that's a play for Sacramento. Says, okay, Daryl, if you want to play that card and you want to wait it out too, fine, we'll wait it out as well. We'll wait till that trade deadline comes knocking on the door until you really see if you're going to get the value you want or not. And then that's when we make our push. Do you think that's a play in Sacramento's mind, Sacramento's perspective? Or is Morey willing to call bluffs and hang on to Simmons until next offseason, these playoffs be damned?
That's a really good question. I would say, and this is pure speculation on my part, Daryl Morey is a guy where, you want to go through and see if you can call this bluff. But a lot of times he'll play with you. Mm-hmm. However, how could you not feel a sense of pressure to move Simmons by the trade deadline because of the Sixers situation and because of Joel Embiid? You have Joel putting his heart and soul out there every single night, and we don't know how many years he has left, Matt. We don't know how many years. So if Daryl decides to wait it out and the Sixers don't do anything with Ben Simmons this year, essentially, that is a season of Joel Embiid in his prime wasted. And I'm sure that I would be surprised if there was not pressure from ownership, right, that made that part of it clear, right? Like, hey, we trust you at all, but just so you know, we've got one of the best guys in the NBA right now, and we can't afford to waste another year of it. The Sixers mentality is win now. And if they're really serious about winning now, I do not know how you wait another year unless you are 90% certain that you can get James Harden next year in a sign and trade. But if you are 20% certain that you could have a chance at it, how do you wait on that? And that goes back to, Matt, okay, where do the Kings come into play? Do they play that card of how serious is Daryl Morey? Well, if I'm the Kings, I would play that card. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, that's certainly the card that I would play. I guess the question becomes, though, who's under more pressure? Is it Daryl Morey and the 76ers to take advantage of Joel Embiid in his prime, like you said, and they have playoff expectations? Or is there more expectations on a first-time general manager in Monty McNair, who's trying to get this team to avoid history? And we know of Vivek Ranadive and Kings ownership, they haven't been afraid to pull the trigger and make some changes. I hope Monty McNair's job isn't on the line, but at the same time, too, I've said many times on Locked On Kings that McNair is the only one who can save this season. This Kings group just does not work together for the most part. As talented as they are, they cannot seem to figure it out. And this could be another season wasted and 16 straight years of the Kings not making the playoffs. So we'll see who's under more pressure and who really cracks first in that scenario between these two teams. But Serena, let's really just cut to the chase here. And I think I know the answer to this question, but to make it perfectly clear for Kings fans and maybe even Sixers fans who might be listening, if a trade is happening that's bringing Ben Simmons to Sacramento, is there any scenario where it doesn't involve De'Aaron Fox going to Philadelphia? Is there any scenario of Ben Simmons and De'Aaron Fox on the same team here?
I don't think so. I really don't. I mean, the Sixers would. There are better deals out there. If you don't have De'Aaron Fox in a deal, then I don't understand how you get the value back that you're giving in Ben Simmons. Now, look, I like Halliburton. I do. But even so, I mean, I don't see it. I think you've got to give up De'Aaron Fox. I even like Buddy Hield, but Buddy Hield I like just, in addition in a trade package, not somebody who is your centerpiece or your focal point in a trade package. So I think that if we see a deal with the Kings and Sixers and De'Aaron Fox isn't in it, I mean, that would shock me.
If the best
what about you? Would you be okay with that?
See, there are very few players realistically that I would be willing to trade De'Aaron Fox for. That being said, I am way more open-minded to the idea of trading De'Aaron Fox today than I was during the offseason when these conversations really started heating up, and that has to do with the context of the regular season. I'm ready for Monty McNair to make a swing for the fences move. If you look back at the history of the Kings, the only time that this Kings team was relevant was when they traded Mitch Richmond for Chris Webber, who didn't want to come here. It was a swing for the fences, and it worked out and gave the Kings and it's the only thing they really haven't tried. That was a while ago. Yeah, exactly. It's the only thing they haven't tried during this playoff drought. So I'm ready for the Kings to try it. But is Ben Simmons the right swing for the fences move if you're trading away De'Aaron Fox? I'm still a little hesitant on that. Much more hesitant than I would be in my dream scenario, which is contacting the Boston Celtics, for example, and trying to get Jaylen Brown to Sacramento for De'Aaron. So that gets you an idea.
The Sixers would like to do that too.
Hey, we'll fight for it.
Sixers would like to do that too. Yeah, we will. And hey, what we can both root for, I guess, would be Boston spiraling out of control. Because if Boston spirals out of control, then Boston would be more likely to do a deal with either Sacramento or Philadelphia. So if we want to be on the same team on something, we could hope for that.
Well, now we're going to have some Locked On Kings listeners going onto the trade machine to put together some extreme 3-team deals to try and figure that out. Well, outside of a Ben Simmons conversation, because I think the ideal trade package that the Kings would send for Ben Simmons bringing him here would be the laughable combination of Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, and as many first round picks as you could possibly. Exactly.
No. Like, are you kidding me? I mean, keep dreaming, Kings fans. Keep dreaming. I mean, that's not happening.
Hey, how about this?
We'll can't do that.
We'll throw in Tristan Thompson just to sweeten the pot a little bit. Does that do it for you?
You are just so generous, Kings fans.
And how about some In-N-Out burgers too? We'll send to Philadelphia and open a chain of In-N-Outs.
I do love an In-N-Out. I was born in California, so I do miss me some animal style fries and an In-N-Out cheeseburger and a vanilla shake.
Today's Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Boost Mobile. You listen to podcasts for the power of knowledge and entertainment. You switch to Boost Mobile for the power of saving money, because with Boost, you get the power of free 5G phone so you can listen to all of the latest episodes, the power of 3 unlimited data lines for $30 a month per line so your family can harness all that brain power too, and the power of one of America's largest 5G networks so all you can do is spend all your time with that speed and power of 5G. With all that money you save and all the knowledge you'll gain, just how powerful will you become? Switch to Boost Mobile and find out. You'll get a free Samsung Galaxy A32 5G when you switch to one of America's largest 5G networks. More power to save. Boost Mobile. Free phone limited to new customers and one per line. Additional restrictions apply. Offers and coverage not available everywhere for all phones networks. See boostmobile.com for details. So realistically, we know that if Ben Simmons is coming to Sacramento, one of Fox or Halliburton, more than likely Fox, is gone in the deal. But outside of a Ben Simmons trade conversation, I'm very interested in the value of those two guys that I mentioned, Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley. And I even want to throw Harrison Barnes in there as well, because I worked with David Locke, of course, host of the Locked On Jazz podcast. And when he came to Sacramento a couple times, I did stats. And on the Utah Jazz radio broadcast, he was saying, man, Harrison Barnes is a missing piece on a championship team. And I know that the 76ers are pretty wing heavy, so maybe this isn't the exact right team to bring up in this scenario. But those three guys, Buddy Hield, Marvin Bagley, and Harrison Barnes, do any of those three ping your mind as that could be a good target for Philly to go out and get? And then what kind of talent do you think they'd be willing to give up to acquire any one of those three?
I mean, I do like Buddy Hield. I think he needs a change of scenery. And look, the Sixers need shooters. The kid could shoot. I mean, he went through quite a rough patch. I haven't watched one of your games this week, but has he shot himself out of the rough patch yet? Because I know he had a long stretch there.
He had a good fourth quarter against San Antonio, really helped the Kings win that game, and then had a good third quarter against Golden State. But for the most part, no, Buddy Hield has not shot himself out of what he is in right now.
I would be interested to see him in a different environment. I would. And but I hear David Locke's point. I like Harrison Barnes as well. But out of those guys, I don't know. I think because of Hield's skill set and because of what the Sixers would need, like in the playoffs surrounding Embiid, somebody to come off the bench and just be able to knock down shots. He can create off the ball. I mean, I don't hate it, but what the Sixers would have to give up, at the same time, with what the Sixers currently have, I don't know how they make their roster better either. So I don't see the trade happening.
Yeah, and a lot of conversations around Buddy Hield are very difficult to have with anybody around the NBA because nobody really knows what Buddy Hield's value is. You see what some say elite skill set, and those don't watch Buddy Hield enough, I think. I mean, he's a very, very good shooter, don't get me wrong, but Buddy Hield can also completely destroy a game for your team if he's shooting too much, which is what he's done here in Sacramento over the last couple of years. So who knows what kind of value Buddy Hield gets. If you can get a first-round pick for him, if that's the best case scenario, if you can get a good, solid young player for him, the Kings have no idea, I think, at this point in time. So it's going to be interesting to see how heavily they shop him as well.
You know, and I wonder from Hield's perspective, just because, like, he's got to know. He does know he's on the trade block, right? Like, he knows that. He's just waiting to get out of there. And so at the same time, you know, how much of his play is like he's just trying to shoot and get out of Sacramento because he's got to know that he's on the trading block. It's not like it's a secret.
Yeah, well, and he had his bags packed for LA before the swerve by the Lakers to end up with Russell Westbrook.
True.
I mean, everybody and their mother thought that deal was done. Buddy Hield thought he was going to La La Land, and I think he was very excited by that prospect. And we've seen Buddy talking with Doc Rivers after the game here in Sacramento and covering their mouths, and we can only speculate, but I assume Buddy's not shy to make a joke like "Get me the hell out of here," and Doc, I know, would play off of that. So who knows with Buddy Hield, who knows with what the Kings and 76ers are going to do as the trade deadline approaches. But Serena, before I let you go, I did want to ask about, completely unrelated, but a guy that I wouldn't call him a friend of mine necessarily, but someone that I got the opportunity to get to know while he was here in Sacramento. And that's 76ers assistant, former Kings head coach, Dave Yeager, who is currently not with the team, battling cancer, unfortunately. Have you heard any information about him, any kind of update? And what have the 76ers, I guess, done, and the fan base done, and everybody done to support him during this time? Because there are some players here in Sacramento that didn't necessarily get along with him, but arguably he was the one that was able to maximize this unit better than any other coach has at this point in time.
Yeah, I wish I had some news to give you on that front, but I really don't. All I can tell you is how supportive everybody around him has been. And when you talk to anybody that has worked alongside him, whether it was closely or not closely, and I'm sure that Kings fans can relate to this from probably hearing it from your end, the amount of positivity that comes out from people talking about Dave Yeager's pretty incredible. So, I mean, our hearts just obviously go out to him, but there has not been an update on when he will return.
Serena, thank you so much for joining me here on the Locked On Kings today. If anything happens between the Kings and Sixers, or the Kings and Celtics and Sixers, or the Sixers and Celtics, maybe I won't contact you then. I'll be mad at you at that point in time. But if anything goes down regarding these two teams, of course, we'll reconvene and talk about it. Appreciate all the great work that you do there over at Locked On 76ers. And one more time, Bagley, Buddy, draft picks, in and out.
Nope, no.
You know what? I'll let you think about it and get back to me. I'll let you think about it.
I have thought about it, Matt. I've thought about it. No.
Damn it. Well, it was worth a shot. Serena, thank you so much. Huge thank you to Serena for joining me here on the Locked On Kings podcast today. Real pleasure to have her on. Looking forward to having her back on in the future. I did the best as I could trying to get her to take that Marvin Bagley, Buddy Hield, and in and out deal that I put on the table, but doesn't sound like she or the 76ers are budging. And it doesn't sound like the Kings landing Ben Simmons is a possibility without trading De'Aaron Fox. And hey, I'll just say it right now. I would not trade De'Aaron Fox for Ben Simmons. That's me. You might be different. If you are, let me know. You can reach me on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. You can reach me via email, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com, or feel free to email me, or rather leave your thoughts down in the comment section down below if you're watching on YouTube. Would love to hear that discussion because I know Ben Simmons has been a name that a lot of Kings fans have been interested in for a while. Doesn't sound like a De'Aaron Fox-Ben Simmons partnership is going to be a possibility, but hey, stranger things have happened in the NBA. Time will tell. I'm sure we'll revisit this conversation more than a few times as the trade deadline gets closer and closer. Appreciate your support as always here on the Locked On Podcast Network and the Locked On Kings podcast. I hope you will join me for the post-game edition of Kings and Clippers. Maybe the Kings can make it 3 straight wins over the LA Clippers this season. We'll have to wait and see. Any information about who's available for that game I will have on my social media accounts as soon as I find out, so make sure to keep an eye out for that. And of course, more great Kings coverage as we get closer and closer to Christmas and 2022. Hard to believe we're heading into another year. It's going to be a great year here on Locked On Kings, and I hope that you will be a part of it. Appreciate all your support as always. I'll talk to you next time. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.